Hello and welcome to Always Bored, Never Boring. I have something a little bit different for you today. A preview of a new game from Steamforged Games that is not the sort of thing I normally cover, and indeed, not the sort of thing they normally make. It is Hearts of Iron, a World War II strategy game spanning the period from 1939 to 1945, which will be marching to Gamefound on the 23rd of January 2025. Now, I am a big fan of Steamforged Games, but when I think of their games, I think of tactical skirmish games and adventure games, usually based on successful video game franchises. Games that focus on those small, turn-by-turn decisions that shape the narrative and determine the outcome. Will you parry or dodge? Will you rest or press the advantage? Will you fight or hide? Hearts of Iron feels like something new for them. It is based on a popular video game, so this is not entirely alien territory, but this time, Steamforged Games are zooming out the perspective to consider war on a global scale, in what is promising to be their most strategic game yet. Hearts of Iron is for 2 to 5 players, but the demo I was sent to make this video included components for 3 players, taking on the roles of the United Kingdom, Germany and the Soviet Union. And yes, this is only a demo set I have here. It's a very nice demo set, but everything I am showing you is only a prototype. Miniatures are 3D printed, and the cards and board may not reflect the final quality. Keep that in mind as we take a closer look at how to recreate, or perhaps rewrite, world history. On opening the prototype, unfolding the world map and examining the miniatures, which are lovely by the way, with unique sculpts for each nation's infantry, tanks, planes and ships, my first impression was that this was going to be Risk or Axis and Allies. It is not. It is a game that focuses much more on political wrangling and building up your country's industrial engine. You will certainly roll your armies across Europe, seizing capitals and crushing your enemies, but in general, the game feels like a lot of the most important stuff is happening off the board. Your victory or defeat is just as much about forging alliances, securing borders, marching your troops into neutral territory to extend your front line, controlling trade routes, maintaining the stability of your country, and ensuring you have the manpower to keep the home fires burning. The game will play out over 6 rounds, each representing 1 year of the war. At the end of 1945, each nation tots up their victory points to determine the winner. As these victory points can be earned in a variety of ways, often not even through direct conflict, military might is just one tool in your arsenal. To get things underway, you lay out the map board and place the score track and the political board beside it. You then shuffle the deck of event cards, placing that to one side, and then you put the round marker on 1939. Each player takes control of one of the major nations in the war and must first determine whether they are going to follow history or forge it anew. To do this, they choose a set of focus cards. These will determine their nation's ideology and their ultimate goal. Does Britain want to consolidate the British Isles? If they do, they will play out the game with the King's Party ideology and will score bonus victory points for securing every region in the United Kingdom and Ireland. Or perhaps they want to construct a Mediterranean bastion. If they do, they can choose democracy or fascism and will score bonus victory points for controlling Albania, Bulgaria, Greece, Hungary, Romania and Yugoslavia. This is a pretty neat idea. The choice you make grants access to a deck of thematically relevant focus cards. These cards are added to a set of generic focus cards that are always used to construct a single deck of powerful strategies and political maneuvers that will help you to work towards your determined goal. In other words, your very first decision determines the strategy you will be playing to for the rest of the game, and while you will have other opportunities to score victory points, playing to that strategy is essential. Having selected your ideology and created your focus deck, you get to build your country's dashboard. You take the part that relates to your country, which lists a trait and a way to score additional victory points, and the part that relates to your chosen ideology, which also lists a trait and a way to score victory points, and you join them together to create a single board. Flip the board over and you will also see all of your starting resources and starting units. That's a really nice, slick design. To complete setup, you arrange your starting units on your starting unit cards and put all of your other units and generals within easy reach. You place a tracking cube on the relevant spaces of your resource board and place your nation's research and engine cards nearby, along with a set of command tokens and your flag and factory tokens. At this point, there will be a lot of stuff in your play area, but nobody said global warfare was going to be easy. At the start of the game, each nation is in control of certain regions, as indicated by their flags on the map. For example, the United Kingdom controls 4 regions, plus a trade route to America. Every region on the map has a series of icons indicating its width, that is the maximum number of units each nation can deploy there, and a soft and hard attack strength. Additionally, some territories provide additional resources: manpower, politics, production, or in the case of capital regions, victory points. To get the first stages of the war underway, each player is allowed to choose to either expand their border or gain an ally. To expand their border, they claim one adjacent region owned by a minor non-player country, even one across a sea space, putting one of their flag tokens over the flag icon printed on the board. This region will provide the controlling player with its resources, can be used to deploy troops, and offers another location where it's possible to build a factory. To gain an ally, a player selects any minor country and places their flag on the allied space for that country on the political board. While they remain allies, the player can deploy their troops in any region controlled by that country. This makes it possible to deploy troops in areas that are far away. All players will then deploy their starting units and factories. This can be done simultaneously, which is true for many actions over the course of the game. Players will often be able to complete all of their actions at the same time, which helps to keep the game ticking over and better simulates the consistent ebb and flow of war on a grand stage. Infantry, tanks and planes can be deployed in any land region controlled by the player or one of their allies. Ships can be deployed in any sea region adjacent to a land region controlled by the player or their allies. Factories can only be placed in regions owned by the player, and there can only be one factory per region, so expansion becomes necessary to maintain the production levels that wartime demands. The game then plays out in a very procedural way, beginning with the engine phase. Each player simultaneously selects one of their engine cards, which represents their country's efforts to win the war. To begin with, all countries have the same engine cards, but they may be able to gain more. Once selections have been made, all players reveal their cards and complete the top action. For example, the United Kingdom has decided to focus on technological progress, so they immediately gain 2 production on their resource tracker. If their production was at 0, they would gain 4 production instead to ensure they can catch up with their rivals. The second action on each card will come into play later in the round. Next is the action phase. First, in the construction step, each player may spend 2 manpower points from their tracker board to build one factory in a region they control that doesn't already have a factory. If they played the industrial push engine card, they can spend an additional 1 manpower to build a second factory. Then in the research step, each player who doesn't have an active research card picks one from those they have available. These research cards may improve units, grant an extra command token, or bolster the defences of their regions. Players can then place 1 progress token on their active research card. If a player used the technological progress engine card, they can place 2 progress tokens instead. Then any player has the option of spending manpower points, adding 1 additional progress token for each 1 manpower spent. If the number of tokens equals the progress value in the bottom right of the card, the player can begin using the benefits of that card immediately, and in the next research step, they will need to select a new research card. Then there is the focus step. Each player that doesn't have an active focus card selects one. Unlike research cards, focus cards often have a requirement that must be met before being selected. For example, if the United Kingdom want to form a trade agreement with Ireland, they must not be at war with Ireland. Players then add progress tokens to their focus cards in the same way they did for research cards, except if they want to place additional progress tokens to speed things up, they purchase those tokens by spending their political power instead of their manpower. Players who use the National Progress Engine card will also get to place 1 additional progress token. Once a focus card has progress tokens equal to its progress value, the player can implement the effects and will then need to select a new focus card next turn. In the case of our trade agreement with Ireland, the UK will instantly become allies with Ireland and will gain a bonus point of production power in each resource generation step while that alliance holds true. The production step is next. Each player may spend production points from their tracker board to build additional units. The cost of units is listed on their unit card, and as players build the units, they place them on the unit card for deployment later. Players who use the Ready for War engine card get to produce their first unit for free. In the following deployment step, players can bring in ready units, positioning them in regions they control or which are controlled by their allies. It costs 1 manpower to deploy a unit, although players who use the Into the Fray engine card can deploy 2 units for free. Players should keep in mind that each region has a width value indicating the maximum number of units that can be positioned there. If any players have generals which are brought into play through focus cards, they can deploy them at this time, positioning generals in any region that contains friendly troops. Deployment completes the action phase, so it's time to move on to the political phase, where players can manipulate their political standing with other countries. This all takes place on the political board. Each player in turn can either raise tension with another country or improve their relations. To raise tension, they spend political power to advance their flag left on the country's political track towards the war side. You want to do this because you aren't actually allowed to attack a country until you have declared war against them, and that means your flag has to be in the leftmost slot. It costs 1 point of political power to move the flag 1 space, or to place a flag on the space directly to the left of the neutral line if there isn't already a flag on the track. But if the countries have opposing ideologies, they find it harder to get along and the flag moves 2 spaces instead. So if the unaligned UK wanted to go to war with fascist Germany, they could spend 1 point of political power to place their flag on Germany's political track. It is positioned just to the left of the neutral line. However, because Germany has an opposing ideology, the flag then moves a 2nd space to the left. The UK can now spend additional political points to move the flag again. If a country wishes to improve relations, the process is similar. They spend political power to move their flag to the right towards the ally space, starting from the neutral line if they don't already have a flag on that country's political track. It costs 1 point to move the flag 1 space, but if both countries share the same ideology, the flag moves 2 spaces. Once it reaches the far right, the country is considered an ally. This phase continues until players have no further moves they wish to make, at which point the game progresses to conflict. During conflict, players take turns placing command tokens face down on the board in regions containing their units. Players start with 2 tokens that allow units to move 1 region, 1 token that allows units to move 2 regions, and 1 bluff token. Once all command tokens are in play, players will take turns revealing any 1 token and performing the related action. A single token can activate all of the units in the selected region, and must activate at least 1 of them. Units move into adjacent regions, stopping if they enter a region that is controlled by a country they are at war with. Crossing water requires a friendly ship to be in the relevant sea space to act as a transport, and of course, ships can transport units along waterways to avoid an extended march. After all units have been positioned, each country has to adjust their political standing again, as the presence of their units in neutral countries will increase the aggression of those neutral countries, pushing them closer to war. If players march carelessly too often, trampling on borders without good calls, they may find many of their neighbours rising up against them. Finally, we get to the battle stage, where players take turns to complete a battle with units or a country they are at war with. If they aren't yet at war, they have to sit on their guns to see what the politicians do next. There are 2 types of battle, a unit battle and a region battle. A unit battle is fought between opposing units, and it's a pretty straightforward affair once you get to grips with it. Each army starts off with 1 red custom dice to roll for their attack. However, each unit has a soft attack value, represented by a bullet on their unit card, and they have a hard attack value, represented by an explosion on their unit card. Before rolling the combat dice, players add up all of these soft attack values of their units in the region, plus 1 unit in each adjacent region that belongs to them. The player with the highest score upgrades their red dice to a yellow dice, which has more hits on it. Then, each player adds up their hard attack values in the same way, and the player with the highest score upgrades their combat dice, either from red to yellow, or from yellow to green. Each player then rolls their dice. For each damage symbol on their dice, their opponent must remove 1 unit. Mutual destruction is a possibility. If a unit battle results in all opposing units being destroyed, or if there were no opposing units to begin with, a player can immediately engage in a battle against the region they are in if they are at war with that region's country. Region battles are worked out in the same way, except the region uses the soft and hard attack values printed on the board. Additionally, damage is never assigned to a region. Instead, if after the attacker has removed destroyed units, they have at least 1 infantry unit left in that region, and they rolled enough damage to exceed the combined total of the region's political manpower and production values, they seize control and get to place their flag. For example, France has a political symbol and a manpower symbol, so in order to successfully seize it, a player must roll at least 3 damage and have at least 1 infantry in France at the end of the battle. After all combats are resolved, there is an end phase, which again is divided into several steps. First, there is an event phase where the top event card is drawn and resolved. These event cards are divided into 2 sections. The top event always occurs, the bottom event only occurs if the indicated country is a minor country that isn't player controlled. Next, players generate their resources. They check each region they control and increase their production by 1 for each factory they have. They then increase their manpower and political power based on the symbols of the regions they control. Some cards they have in play may grant additional resources during this step as well. Then each player checks their current stability and modifies their resources by the values indicated for their current stability level. Then they must pay political power equal to the value in brackets on their current stability level, or else they must decrease stability by 1. If they maintain stability, they may spend additional political power equal to the value in brackets of the next stability level to increase their stability by 1. After that, they score victory points for capital regions they control and any other victory scoring actions they achieved. For example, the King's Party UK will score a victory point in this phase if they control the most regions, including sea regions. Finally, the round tracker advances to the next year and you go back to the engine phase, except if the round tracker was already on 1945, in which case the war ends and players tot up their final victory scores, including victory points awarded for the endgame goal they selected right at the start. And that's it. Only, it's not it. What I have shown you here is just a brief overview of the core concepts. This is a big game capturing a big global event. There is a lot going on, more than I can cover here, and as a big game it will take a while for players to get to grips with it. Your first game will be a steep learning curve and you will probably make many strategic mistakes as you learn the different phases and the best ways to progress your own goals. And yet, despite that scale, this is not a campaign game. This is not a game where you have to free up several game sessions to see the war to conclusion. It's not a quick game, it will take a fair few hours to work through, especially with new players learning the ropes, but it does allow you to play World War II in its entirety in a single sitting. And as you can play as different countries, select different ideologies, use different strategies, and choose different focus cards each time you play, this is a game you can revisit, getting a different experience each time. If you are looking for a meticulous war game that accurately reproduces all aspects of World War II, this may be something you want to check out. And if you are interested, you can head over to Gamefound right now to check out a preview of the upcoming campaign. And if you follow before the campaign launches on the 23rd of January and subsequently make a pledge, you will be entitled to a free gift of a first player medal and some extra focus cards. You will find a link in the video description below. And that just about does it for me. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please consider pressing the like button. If you really like this video, please consider subscribing if you don't already do so. And hopefully, I will see you all again very soon. Bye bye everyone. Bye bye.